Good morning, everybody. I think we are ready to proceed with our final day of this year's annual meeting. We do have a list of items to sort of work our way through, so if you'll bear with us, we'll throw those up on the screen and then work through them in due course. So if I could ask the Executive Director to scroll. Thank you. So before us lies the list of topics to address over the course of the morning. And as I indicated, we'll work through these and discuss them in sequence. So with that, and with no further ado, could we move to regulatory proposal A2 with regards to fishing seasons? Do we have a motion on this one, colleagues? Bob?
Mr. Chairman, I'd make a motion that we have opening dates for the halibut season for 2025 beginning on March 24th at 0600 a.m. local time, and a closing date of December 7th at 23:59 local time as well. I made an error on the opening date. It's March 20th. I believe I said 24th.
Thank you for that. Do we have a second? Peter?
Yeah, I second March 20th, 0600. I second the motion.
Perfect. So we are needing discussion. Seeing none. Peter, sorry.
So first off, the opening date this year was rather complicated. While the Canadian Conference Board wanted March 7th for smaller tides and longer seasons, and the U.S. Conference Board wanted a March 10th date, it was clear the U.S. administration would not have adequate time to deliver them. The Process Advisory Board wanted a March 14th opening, an opening which is later in the week for logistics. However, that is near the peak of the tides. So to have a lower tide and a late in the week delivery, March 20th was proposed. As well, there was a proposal for a year-round fishery in Canada from Robert Hockness. We have not adopted it this time, but we have asked the Secretariat to draw together information for consideration into the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments on this one? Are we adopted? Okay, thank you all. Can proceed to A1. So this is for the total adopted mortality, TCY. Do we have a motion on this one, colleagues? Neil?
I'd like to make a motion for regulatory area 2B that we adopt a TCEY of 5.45 million pounds.
Do we have a second?
I second.
Thank you. Can we discuss? Oh.
Just a few comments. So we did approach this year with serious concerns about the status of the stock, which obviously we've all been talking about all week. Lowest catch in memory coastwide, very low spawning biomass, poor recruitment, and persistent low weighted age. So with all of that in mind, we really saw the importance of taking a precautionary approach this year. And while our particular survey indices were only slightly down, we do believe in the importance of taking a broader view and sharing the conservation burden that's needed to support the sustainability of the fisheries. So that is, in short order, the basic rationale for the proposal from 2B this year.
Peter?
Yeah. Two things stood out to me from this year's stock assessment. First, understanding the spawning biomass has changed significantly over the last couple of years. 2 years ago, we predicted we had 192 million pounds of spawning biomass. Last year, with new information, we predicted we had 172 million pounds of spawning biomass. Now our understanding is there is 145 million pounds of spawning biomass. Our knowledge and understanding of where we are at has dramatically changed with this new information. Second, with the new information, our understanding of the relative spawning biomass has also changed as well. Our precautionary measures due to additional risks of record lows in abundance and productivity were not as precautionary as we had hoped. Now, the risk of the stock was below B20 has grown tenfold. At B20, the management action for interim harvest policy is no directed fishery. We are all off the water. With this in mind, it is clear to me significant cuts were needed. It is clear from Dr. Planis's analysis that there is just one stock. Therefore, cuts needed to be meaningful and across all regions of the stock. Region 4 is struggling to harvest their allocation. The FIS and fishery demonstrate Regions 3 abundance is shrinking fast, while Region 2 is struggling, but relatively not as much. However, cuts need to come from all regions to be meaningful and effective. So,
Thank you, Commissioner DeGrief. Any further comments? Okay. Are we voting on this one as alone, or are we waiting for the secondary motion? Vote on this one. Do we have consensus? We do. Thank you. Do we have a motion for the remaining regulatory areas? John.
Thank you. I move that the Commission adopt the following TCEYs for the U.S. regulatory areas. For Area 2A, 1.65 million pounds. For Area 2C, 5.22 million pounds. Area 3A, 9.08 million pounds. 3B, 2.86 million pounds. 4A, 1.34 million pounds. 4B, 1.04 million pounds. And 4C, D, and E, 3.08 million pounds.
Thank you. Do we have a second for this one? Neil? Okay. And should we discuss?
Thank you. I'd like to speak to this in some detail given the diversity of the regulatory areas, so bear with me for the length of this. The commissioners and everyone who depends on the Pacific halibut resource faced a very big challenge this year, with many concerning signs that the stock coast-wide has continued to decline. I'll summarize some of the key factors here, largely quoting from Dr. Stewart, because these points were instrumental in the U.S. delegation's discussions this year, and also in discussions among the 6 commissioners, and I presume also in discussions within the Canadian delegation. So fishing mortality in 2024 decreased from 2023, despite the fact that we had reduced the TCEY by a substantial amount in 2023, and then again by a lesser amount in 2024. There's been a continued shift from older to younger fish in both the fishery and the FIS. Assessment results indicate that spawning biomass is 17% lower than estimated last year, which reflects updated fishery data, which provides some information that was not revealed in the setline survey. The stock remains at a low productivity level due to low weighted age and low recruitment. Fish and fishery indices are at historical low levels. The 2024 FIS coast-wide 032 weight per unit effort in pounds per skate was down 9% compared to 2023. Commercial fishery weight per unit effort from logbooks was recorded as -2% coast-wide, but that's expected to increase to -7% once additional logbooks are factored in. Size at age is decreasing too, not just declines in weight per unit effort. So that means less larger, older fish and more younger, smaller fish. And the stock continues to rely heavily on a single strong cohort from 2012. The 2016 year class, so now age 8 fish in 2024, might be of similar magnitude to the 2012 cohort, but that remains very uncertain. And there's little information on recruitments after 2016 in the currently available data. The spawning biomass is estimated to be above B30%, which of course is positive, and we held fishing intensity considerably lower than the F43% reference level, yet the stock is still not where we all want it to be. Potential effects of recent ecosystem factors are difficult to characterize for Pacific halibut, and newly observed patterns seen with climate change mean low predictability for those kinds of factors, so that could be an influence as well. And finally, the reduced scope of the FIS may be biasing these data in some areas. There's a chance that the stock is down more or that fishing intensity is higher, and that is something that can't be reflected in the risk table. So as to specific TCEY levels, the minus 15.76% reduction in TCEY for US areas is a bit larger than what US stakeholders recommended, and Canada elected to match the aggregate US percentage reduction at that minus 15.76%. Overall, a coastwide reduction of more than 15% decreases the likelihood of a continued decline in the stock trend, which is exactly the point of the reductions. At this coastwide TCEY level, the Secretariat's risk table projects a 26% chance of a continued decline next year, compared to what would be a 43% chance of a decline if we stuck with the status quo TCEY. And the 3-year probability of decline decreases from 45% to 30%. In my book, this coastwide reduction in TCEY gives us significantly better odds of turning around the trend, although of course there are no guarantees. Fishing intensity would be reduced to a conservative F51%. And I'll just provide briefly the U.S. Commissioner's specific rationale for each of the U.S. regulatory areas. So for 2A, 1.65 million pounds, the agreement between the parties maintains a 1.65 million pound allocation for Area 2A on the U.S. West Coast, which meets the needs of a carefully crafted catch sharing agreement that accounts for all users of the resource. Prominent in that 1.65 million pound TCEY level is a recognition of the trust responsibility of the U.S. government to the 13 treaty tribes that depend upon halibut. U.S. commissioners met with representatives of those tribes to hear their views before decisions were made, and we reaffirmed the U.S. government's trust responsibility. The 2023 FIS indicated, so last year's FIS, indicated a 10% increase in 2A, and it's unfortunate that due to insufficient resources, IPHC was not able to sample in 2A in 2024, but the space-time model results indicated a 2% increase in that area, albeit with wider confidence intervals to reflect added uncertainty. Still, we have pretty solid assurance from the Secretariat that 1.65 million pounds remains a sustainable TCEY level for 2A. For 2C, 5.22 million pounds, the FIS showed a 6% decline in O32 weight per unit effort this year, and available data show slightly lower declines in fishery performance. Stakeholders in 2C recommended an 8.5% cut, well over the minus 6% decline indicated by the FIS. U.S. commissioners heard from a number of users in 2C who supported a deeper cut than 8.5%, and ultimately we chose to go with a 9.8% reduction, recognizing that the stock has been shifting eastward such that more of the distribution is in Region 2, with 2C having the highest weight per unit effort of any of the areas, and thus a somewhat larger cut here provides the opportunity to help reduce fishing mortality overall. U.S. commissioners carefully considered the effects of this reduction on the charter sector, noting that if we had cut 2C any more than this amount, it would have resulted in the season starting with a lower size limit for retained halibut of less than or equal to 36 inches in length rather than 37 inches, in addition to closing additional Tuesdays. So for that reason, we did not cross that threshold. For Area 3A, 9.08 million pounds, we decided on a reduction of 20.1%, which is just a shade more than the 20% recommended by stakeholders. Candidly, that difference was simply a mathematical adjustment to help facilitate achieving our target coast-wide reduction. So we largely followed what the stakeholders recommended. According to the FIS, Area 3A had an 18% decrease in O32 weight per unit effort, And the U.S. Conference Board members noted that a 20% cut is responsive to anecdotal fishery performance information, as well as the historic fish trend, which remains in a troubling decline. U.S. commissioners took note of the effects of this reduction on the charter sector, where in addition to closing all Tuesdays and Wednesdays, this will mean reducing the size of the second fish to as low as 26 inches until the projected charter harvest removals meet the allocation. And we acknowledge that Area 3A stakeholders for taking the initiative to support this large reduction, which will no doubt be painful for all users and comes on top of notable reductions in the past 2 years. For Area 3B, 2.86 million pounds. This area saw a 21% decrease in the O32 weight per unit effort in the FIS in 2024, albeit with limited geographic survey coverage, and a similar decrease in commercial fishery performance, down minus 22% for fixed hook and minus 19% for snap gear. Commissioners decided on a 17.1% reduction in TCEY there, a little bit more than what stakeholders recommended, which was 15%. And that's because we decided a bit larger reduction was an appropriate response to not only this year's data, but also the longer term trend. For Region 4, I'll address these three areas together. So again, 1.34 million pounds for 4A, 1.04 million pounds for 4B, and 3.08 million pounds for 4C, D, and E. For each of these regulatory areas in Region 4, the U.S. Commissioners settled on a reduction of 16.8%. Stakeholders had recommended minus 16% in 4A and minus 15% in the other two areas. We noted that the weight per unit effort in the fishery has fallen considerably to the point that some users expressed grave concern about simply not being able to find halibut, and thus we felt somewhat larger reductions were warranted in Region 4 to help rebuild the resource. So that's my summary of reasons for our decisions for U.S. regulatory areas. I'll just close this by acknowledging again that the commissioners recognize that the cuts that we're announcing are not easy for anyone to face, and expressing again our deep respect for the way users of the resource have stepped up and shared the burden of reducing fishing mortality so we can hopefully get to a better place soon. And I know you all join me in hoping for better news about recruitment in the near future. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Commissioner Kurland. Do we have any further comment, or can we vote? Oh, sorry, Bob.
Speak to it. Okay. I'd like to compliment Commissioner Kurland and his remarks of the justification for these reductions. I am going to be supporting them. And just to reiterate that the reductions from the FIS in the heart of the resource in 3A, 3B with the 21 and 18% reductions, and complementary reductions from the weight per unit effort from the industry. The industry numbers have been dropping in areas west of Kodiak, all the three areas in Region 4 for the last decade. And what we've done in the past doesn't seem to be abating this fall. And this is an attempt to try to get under that magic number so that equilibrium yield where we can start rebuilding this resource. Hopefully we have the 2016 year class will help backfill some of this, or maybe a 17 or 18 year class. But this overall reduction of 15.76% I'll be supporting, and I want to compliment the Conference Board and PAG for their hard work and the significant reductions they recommended to us over this week. Thank you.
Thank you. Any last comments? No? Can we move to, sorry, always looking the wrong way. Peter.
Yeah, from a domestic perspective, it was important for Canada to share in conservation, but also maintain its share of the resource. These cuts in both Canada and the US have achieved both. They have reduced the chance of being at B20 in half over 3 years. I know these cuts have real impacts and effects on stakeholders and communities up and down our shared coastline. But as Councillor Howard Grant spoke at his invitation, We must ensure the survival of the halibut resource for future generations. Thank you.
Thank you. Can we move to adopt? Done. Yes? We're moved and seconded? Sorry, did we vote? We have consensus? Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. Can we proceed to the next? So we, as per normal practice, we're sort of presenting here on the screens a more detailed sector breakdown. Of course, I would take this opportunity to remind everybody in the room that this is also available in the report that'll be published later this afternoon, but we'll leave it up for a moment or two so folks can do their necessary snapping of pictures and have it available at hand. Appears that we're past that, so.
Come back a slide. I think we need to clarify line 3 there on the breakout table. The more breakout. Third line is recreational discards. Okay. Yeah.
Okay, I would just draw folks' attention to that. The third line down here should be recreational discards, not simply recreational. If you look more attentively later down the page, you'll see that there's a second recreational. So we'll make that correction in the report, and that'll be the published version later this afternoon. Moving to Moving to regulatory proposal for charter management measures. Do we have a motion on this regulatory proposal?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we adopt the harvest measures in the regulatory areas 2C and 3A as put on this slide. I'd like to mention that there's a couple items missing here that normally goes into this slide, which is in both areas, skippers are not allowed to retain halibut, as well as we've implemented a one a day trip limit in 2C. There's also one trip limit per day in 3A. Those will be in the regulations when published. But I move to adopt these basic harvest measures for area 2C and 3A.
Thank you. Do we have a second? Neil? And I think your did you wish to discuss further?
I think these reductions every year are very severe for the charter sectors. At these low levels of allocation, every pound of allocation means a lot. And we're battling over inches of fish over cusps of allocation. So I really appreciate the commissioner's ability to look at that when we set allocations, that we take that consideration. We could have been a little bit more worse than we are now. Hopefully, the new legislation of a recreational quota entity will be able to increase our allocation and get out of the situation. But the charter sector is very sensitive to these low levels of allocation. So I think the overall impact or direction that the Commission has taken to be very conservative and trying to respond to the conditions of the stock will affect everybody, and more so the charter sector. If we can contribute to that in the long term, it'll help our situation. So appreciate it. All stakeholders having the attitude of conservation and trying to avert any further decline in the stock. And the charter sector is very sensitive to that. So we'll be the first ones to benefit. So I appreciate that effort. Thank you.
Thank you. No further comments. Can we move to vote? We have consensus. Thank you. David, might I ask you to speak to the upcoming meeting schedule?
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. So in paper 18, we have provided a preliminary 3-year meeting calendar for information at this point. And I guess just a note that some of those meeting dates will move depending on the availability of venues, the availability of board members. So just keep that in mind as those changes are made. We'll put them onto the IPHC website for ease of access. And as part of that, through the chair, I would pass to the US to nominate a location for AM102. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the United States would be happy to host next year in Bellevue, Washington, January 19 through 23, 2026.
Noted with appreciation. We look forward to seeing you there. So with that, we can move to item 4B, the MSAB membership. Did we have a motion on this or speak to this? John?
Yeah, thank you. So I don't know that we need a motion per se, but just recall that longtime MSAB member Sarah Webster from the Alaska Department of Fish and Game took a different job last year. And we recently received a letter from Alaska Department of Fish and Game from the commissioner nominating Dr. Philip Joy to the MSAB. The U.S. has had 5 government reps to the MSAB for many years, from the North Pacific Fishery Management Council, the Pacific Council, Alaska Department of Fish and Game, the National Marine Fisheries Service, and then the U.S. Science Advisor. Those are the 5. But come to find out, the rules of procedure only provide for 4. So even though we've been doing this for many years. So commissioners had a discussion with the executive director, and based on this, I recommend that the commission make an exception to Rule 2, Paragraph 3C of the IPHC Rules of Procedure that limits contracting party representation to 4 government agency personnel from each contracting party, so the domestic agencies can nominate additional representatives to the MSAB. And I would just note that costs of participation are borne by the domestic agencies and not by the commission.
Thank you for that. I think we had an opportunity to discuss that previously, and we are so agreed. So thank you for clarifying that for participants here today. Can we move to the next item? Right, 5th secondary objective. So we had discussed this previously throughout the meeting, but we did wish to loop back and have a discussion here. Do we have well, I don't know again if we need a motion here, but anyway, John?
Thank you. Yeah, so we discussed this under agenda item 8.1 regarding the design objective for the FIS. And I won't reiterate all this, but just in short, I've been concerned, as I know a number of people have, with the revenue neutrality objective, that it's unrealistic in light of the imbalance between survey costs and revenues, and can have the unfortunate effect of incentivizing extra sampling in high productivity areas just to make money. So I proposed earlier in the meeting revising the secondary objective for the FIS, the one that addressed revenue neutrality, with the following language: cost effectiveness without compromising the scientific integrity of the survey design. And when we brought that up earlier in the meeting, Commissioner Davis asked for a little bit of additional discussion, and my impression is we now have consensus, but maybe I'd look to Neil to see if he'd like to add anything.
Certainly, and thank you for the opportunity. I think we had wanted to make sure that collectively we had a couple things covered with our objectives, and I'm comfortable that with this revised language we do, in the sense of, number one, that while we want to be cost effective without compromising the scientific integrity, this does not magic away the financial challenges we have with funding the survey. And so that remains a real focus for the commission, and something that we're going to need to continue looking for ways to resolve in the years ahead. The second was that I also wanted to ensure we were clear we weren't doing anything more than what we needed to be doing with the survey to meet our scientific needs. And I think that's sufficiently covered by our tertiary objective that you can see in the third row here. So I'm supportive of these changes. Thank you.
Thank you both for that. And we are agreed. We move on. Related to this predicament we find ourselves in with regards to the FIS, we would ask Mr. Norm Pillen to come forward and speak to an idea that emanated from the Processor Advisory Board.
Thank you, Commissioners. We managed to miss this in our PAB report yesterday, and just really wanted to touch base and make sure that people in the room and the Commissioners got to hear what came out of that discussion. You know, a lot of the FIS financial issues have been a major topic in the last couple of years, and the PAB discussed it at length, and recognizing the challenges in industry and profitability, and also with commission and trying to fund this, it felt the PAB felt like maybe there was some opportunity to start thinking out of the box of how we might be able to obtain outside funding sources to help with this. And so in recognition of that, we stated, acknowledging the fiscal pressure on the IPHC, the PAB requested the formation of a committee or working group to evaluate alternative funding options for the FIS. And basically what that means is we would form a committee. There were several hands up in the PAB that would volunteer to be part of that committee, myself included, to reach outside of industry to see what opportunity there might be. The legalities of how that funding is obtained and how it's used. You know, there's probably a lot to work through there, but we would just look for the support of the commission to in that process. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Do we have any comments on this, John?
Thanks. Yeah, I'd just like to really applaud the outside the box thinking and appreciate the offer to try to help in this regard. You know, at least for NOAA on the U.S. side, we don't have a mechanism to accept private funding for you know, essentially government operations. I suspect the same is true in Canada. But there may be mechanisms to have funding go directly to the Secretariat. And as you alluded to, Norm, you know, we'll have to look at all the technicalities and legalities of that, and of course make sure that there's, if we can pull this off, that there's some firewall there, so you know, people aren't thinking that it looks like funders are specifying where the sampling would happen and that sort of thing. But I recognize the good intent and very much appreciate it. We are in a tough spot and need to think creatively. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Commissioner Curlin. And thank you, Commissioners. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Okay. So on this, I think we're approaching, as per Rule 9 of the IPHC Rules of Procedure, the Commission is required to elect a new chairperson for next year. My reign ends with the close of this meeting, to the benefit of many of you, I'm sure. So I would ask if there is a motion to nominate a new chair. Bob.
In accordance with the Rules of Procedure 2024, Rule 9, I move that John Curlin serve as chairman of the IPHC for the next year.
Do we have a second? We have a second. Do we have consensus? We do. Begrudgingly. And then we also require a new vice chair, as per Rule 9. Do we have a motion on a new vice chair? Neil?
I move that we appoint Mark Waddell as the vice chair over the next year.
Second.
Thank you all. So noted and adopted. And I think this now brings us to the end of our business. No, almost. We are going to be taking, this is where we take our 30-minute break, right? Thank you. See, this is why they're voting me out. No. So we will resume after a 30-minute break and review the report. Maybe a shorter break. So maybe let's say a 15-minute break. And then review the report on the screen for adoption. So thank you all for your patience this morning. And we will pause for 15 minutes. And closing remarks at the end, yes.
We do the closing now.
Yeah. Okay, we'll do, sorry. We will do closing remarks. So in that vein, and I guess before we conclude, I would like to take a moment to recognize the dedication and hard work of everyone involved in the IPHC. As a newly appointed commissioner, it's been very evident to me the depth of collaboration and the shared commitment to preserving the resource that is held by everybody in this room, and the extent to which we work collaboratively to that end. First, I'd like to extend my gratitude to Conference Board and Processor Advisory Board members. Your thoughtful discussion and willingness to find common ground have been invaluable. Thank you for your efforts. Thanks to your efforts, we were able to make informed decisions that keep sustainability at the forefront of our work. I would also like to acknowledge the immense logistical efforts that goes into making these meetings possible. So to Dr. Wilson and to Secretariat staff, thank you for your guidance, your preparation, your expertise, which has allowed us to ensure that we have the information and structure we need to navigate these complex discussions. Your contributions do not go unnoticed whatsoever, and we are truly thankful for those. Finally, to my fellow commissioners, thank you for your warm welcome and to your continued dedication to this important work. I look forward to the years ahead and to continuing to build our shared commitment to sustainable and responsible fisheries management. Thank you. John.
Thanks. Well said, Mark. Appreciate that. I'd like to offer thanks again to Canada for hosting us here in Vancouver. Thanks to the amazing Secretariat staff, both those who are here and those back in Seattle, for making our work possible. Thanks also to staff from all of the partner agencies, from NOAA, from DFO, Alaska Department of Fish and Game, the states of Washington, Oregon, California, province of British Columbia, the State Department, all of whom support the commissioners with scientific and technical advice. And as Mark indicated, thanks very much to stakeholders for an incredibly high level of engagement and universal commitment to good stewardship of the Pacific halibut resource. And the U.S. looks forward to hosting everyone next year in Bellevue. Thanks.
Thank you. David?
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. I'm just going to echo those sentiments and just highlight the incredible amount of work that the team does behind the scenes, not only for this meeting, but in the lead up to the annual meeting itself and the subsidiary bodies. And so I just want to say a big thank you, particularly for those Secretariat staff who are remote in support of this meeting. And then, of course, everybody who's in the room, and some of us have already left and gone back to work in Seattle. But I just want to say a huge thank you. It's a privilege to work with all of you. Yeah, thank you very much again. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any final comments from other commissioners? Nope. So I'm going to use this lovely little device and close this out. Thank you, folks. Shall we resume? Thank you, everybody. We're going to move to reviewing the report of this meeting. I would note that, of course, should there be edits with regards to modest or very minor corrections, typos and the like, please do send those into the Secretariat, but we will not seek to raise those during our deliberations. Instead, we'll elect to focus on more substantive items that may require some modification in the text. And for the process of reviewing of the report, I would suggest that we move section by section and can go to those areas we need to hone in on with greater attention. So within section 1, I do not believe there's any particular items, but I will also turn to guidance from our executive director, who can perhaps take us to where we have our first set of comments or edits.
Just a process question here. I trust for working through this, we can invite our advisors to raise a hand and chime in on this.
Yes.
Thanks.
Okay. So we can keep moving along here, perhaps until we have a first set of comments or questions. Looking to, yep, sorry, David.
That's okay. I'll just help move it along a little bit. Are there any edits to section 3? Not seeing any. Agenda item or section 4 on fisheries monitoring.
Sorry, number 30.
Mike.
Sorry, number 30. The intent with that was to make annual compiled reports of comments they've heard during the season. So maybe request annual compiled reports, plural.
Okay. Any further comments moving into 4.2? Into section 5. Right on through into section 6. Any comments on section 6? Are we moving to section 7? Thank you. Section 8.
You just asked Dave, did you add anything about the colloquy over the secondary objective and essentially Neil's comments? Did you add any language responsive to that?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. No, just what's on screen. So the Commission agreed to updated priorities for the FIS as outlined in Table 4, and then just having the text that was on screen during the presentation. If there's addition
I
that
don't
you'd
know if you
like.
wanted anything else.
I'm okay
Okay.
without. Yeah, I think it was just clarifying, so that's fine.
Okay. Paragraph 62 and on. Section 9. Still in section 9, paragraph 80, I'm just noting we've got highlighted text in the tables. That's all updated.
Dave, can I just ask oh, sorry, did you?
So table 6 was your point before table 6?
It is, yes, it is before
Okay.
table 6. I was going to ask David, in 78, the probabilities there, was that something Ian calculated based on our actual coastwide TCY?
That's correct.
Okay. Just want to verify that the numbers were good, but
So move to table 6. Peter, Neil.
This is just the wording change in line 3 to clarify it's recreational discards. Separate from line 7, which is recreational.
Yeah, thank you. Through the chair, just noting that there's some footnotes there. Would it be okay to call up Basha just to confirm? Sure.
Yeah, please. Table 6, line 3. We just have, actually, I guess it's applicable to both recreational and subsistence, right? We have 3 and 4, and then 7 and 8. I'm hoping we can have clearer language that distinguishes.
Thank you very much. I will just provide the clarification that the TCY consist of 2 components. There are FCYs, official limit components, and non-FCY components, which do not have a limit, but are based on projections. That's why the table is normally separated between those 2 components. And depending whether sector is part of the catching plan that establishes limit for that sector would be then in the FCY part of the table, and not if there's no specific limit established under domestic catching arrangement, then that sector would be under the section for non-FCY components. That's why the recreational sector or subsistence sector might be under either of these parts of this table. So when you think, for example, 2A might have subsistence that is part of the limit versus the subsistence that has only projection for other area, that would be the non-FCY subsistence.
Okay, thank you. I understand that. I had been more interested in distinguishing. I mean, we have a couple lines here that I think, like 3 and 4. What is line 3? Maybe I will. What is line 3 as distinguished from line 7? This is the FCEY versus non-FCEY component.
So the line 3 would be part of the, I can't see it now on the screen, but the first part is the non-FCYs versus the FCYs. And the additional clarifications as it's now described shown on the screen, those like each row is described under the table.
Mr. Chairman, I think I could help with that.
Okay, please.
Line 3 reflects the unguided recreational halibut fishing in Alaska. And that is not part of the catch sharing plan. And so as we go down the columns of area 2C and 3A, we see in that line, for example, in area 2C, 1.01 million pounds of recreational halibut harvest. That would be unguided recreational halibut harvest. The charter fishery is part of the catch sharing plan. So continuing down that column, we would see 0.72 million pounds. That is part of the catch sharing plan that is allocated to the charter sector.
I understand. Thank you for that clarification, and I'm supportive of the edits that are on the screen here.
Thank you for that.
I just wonder if would a parenthetical in both places, guided and unguided, would that make it more transparent for everyone?
May I?
It won't be the same in each column.
Oh, maybe not.
It would apply slightly differently for Canadian water, where the non-FCY component of the recreational catch represents the discards versus the FCY component for the Canadian fishery represents the actual landings. So that's why that
Everything is
distinction
more
here.
complicated than it appears. Okay.
So the revised text that's currently on the screen is perhaps as clear as we can make it. Thank you for that, everybody. Moving along. Section 9.4, sorry. So I scroll myself. Section 10, national reports. Section 11. Oops, sorry. Okay, section 11. Section 12 and 13. Then moving into other business. Although I'll pause.
Forgive me, Andrea Hatton, I'm with NOAA Office of General Counsel. With regards to paragraph 91,
Sure.
I believe it appears on the very bottom of page 21, if I'm not mistaken.
Paragraph 91. Yep.
Paragraph 91, yes. And this has to do with stakeholder proposal C2 and Mr. Alverson's motion, just making sure it's accurately reflected there.
Okay.
We believe after the word consideration, it would be more accurate to add language such as the following, and specifically to advise the NPFMC that the commission believes that the proposal falls within the NPFMC's purview. The concern being, I think we heard from stakeholders, a concern about passing the hot potato, and we'd like to see that reflected in the report. Please, thank you.
Thank you for that.
Good catch. Thank you.
Could I ask you to cast an eye just to ensure we characterize that appropriately on the screen? Or captured it?
Yeah, the hot potato's been corrected.
And we advised rather than advice.
Advise, yeah. And purview. Purview. I'm not sure that the and take no future action is necessary, and it may have the inadvertent effect of sending the wrong message to stakeholders. That would be my thought.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Commissioners are comfortable. Okay, moving on. Section 10, Section 11. Yep.
Just a procedural question. I think, David, is for you. I was just noticing we have one or two places here where rather than the commission recommending or requesting something, we're noting something, but it still requires an action on the part of the Secretariat. So I'm looking at 105, for example. And can you confirm for us that you have a way of sort of capturing all of these things that are in fact actions, even if they have a bolded capped word that does not sort of direct in the same way. Just wanted to make sure we're not sort of nothing's falling through the cracks, so to speak.
Yeah, thank you. Through the chair. The short answer is because these are coming through the Finance and Administration Committee, and they have their own specific financial regulations that once the Finance and Administration Committee directs the Secretariat, we take that as a formal action, and that will be again reported out to the FAC next year and also through the actions arising from that meeting. That said, there's certainly nothing wrong with, for example, saying that the Commission agreed with whatever text it was from the FAC, or repeating it. So you have those sort of three options, but just to give you that sense of knowing that we're going to be undertaking the FAC requests and recommendations in full.
Yeah, that's the key. I'm not fussed about the language so much as that, and maybe just, whatever we do, let's do it consistently in terms of FAC versus Commission, how we deal with that. Thanks.
Okay. Further comments? Nope. Moving to section 12, Conference Board, and 13, no comments. Moving to other business, section 14. Moving to section 15. Are we able to adopt this report, colleagues? Record time. So adopted. Thank you all. Thank you, everybody. You are released. Take care.
And if I could just reiterate the comment to the delegations, if there are minor edits, try and get them to me very shortly, and we'll try and publish this report before lunch. Thank you again.